The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the patio of an upscale restaurant. The scent of seared steak, aged wine, and expensive cigars lingered in the warm evening air. Waiters moved gracefully between linen-covered tables as soft jazz whispered from overhead speakers. Everything was polished. Perfect. Untouchable. And then, her. A girl, no older than 12, hovered at the edge of the patio. Her clothes were ragged, shoes too big for her feet, and dust clung to her skin like a second layer. Guests turned away, disturbed by her presence. But one table, near the edge, caught her attention. A man sat alone, rich, dignified, but wheelchair-bound. Half a filet mignon remained on his plate, untouched. She approached quietly, hands clasped in front of her. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, voice trembling yet polite. "Can I take the leftovers?" The man raised an eyebrow, sizing her up. His eyes were cold at first, then amused. "The leftovers?" he repeated, glancing at his steak. "Sure, if you can make me walk." It was meant as a cruel joke, a smirk curling his lips. A table nearby chuckled nervously. To them, it was absurd, laughable even. A disabled billionaire mocking the impossible. But the girl didn't laugh. She simply smiled, a sad, tired smile that held more pain than her small frame should have known. Her eyes didn't leave his. "Thank you," she said quietly, reaching for the plate. For a brief second, silence replaced jazz. His smirk faltered. He didn't know it then, but something had shifted. That simple moment, that quiet plea, would become the start of a miracle neither of them expected. And as she turned away, no one noticed the faint twitch in his leg, not even him. Yet. The laughter from the nearby tables faded into an uneasy silence. The paralyzed millionaire leaned back in his chair, still smirking, but something about the girl's expression unsettled him. She hadn't reacted the way he expected. No bitterness, no embarrassment. Just a small, knowing smile and eyes far older than her years. As she reached for the plate, her fingers brushed against his leg. He flinched out of habit, even though he hadn't felt sensation there in years. But then, her hand stayed. Not with arrogance or demand, but gently, reverently, as if she were placing a prayer. She bowed her head slightly, her fingers barely resting on his knee, and whispered words so soft they seemed to sink directly into the soul of the moment. "God hears jokes too, sir. Sometimes. He answers them." The smirk vanished from his face. No one spoke. Even the jazz overhead seemed to hush, as if the universe itself paused to hear her. Her words hung in the air, not loud, not demanding, but heavy with weight, with mystery. The kind of thing that lingers in the back of your mind long after it's spoken. The man looked down at her small hand, then at her face, and something tightened in his chest. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the richest man in the room. He felt seen. Challenged. Humbled. What had been a casual insult now echoed back as prophecy. The air around them changed, thicker, slower, sacred somehow. Other diners didn't understand why they felt uneasy or why their conversation stopped mid-sentence. But something unseen had stirred. Something old. Something powerful. The girl withdrew her hand slowly, took the plate, and turned to leave. And the man sat motionless, haunted by the warmth he thought he'd imagined in his leg. The girl cradled the food container gently, as if it held something far more precious than cold steak and mashed potatoes. Without another word, she turned and began to walk away, slow, careful steps through the polished maze of tables and stairs. No one tried to stop her. Most looked away, uncomfortable with the quiet truth she carried. At the table behind her, the man remained frozen. But not in control. His fingers gripped the armrests of his sleek, custom wheelchair. His eyes, once distant, dulled by years of disappointment and silent suffering, were suddenly locked on one place. His legs. For a moment, there was nothing. Then. A twitch. A small, almost imperceptible flicker of movement in his right foot. Then another. His breath caught in his throat. He blinked, thinking it must have been a trick of the eye. A spasm, maybe. Wishful thinking. But no, it happened again. His toes moved. Wild disbelief surged through him like a jolt of electricity. His hand slammed down on the wheel rim, jerking the chair back as he cried out. Wait. I felt that. I felt that. Nearby guests turned, startled. A waiter dropped a wineglass. The jazz faltered. But he didn't notice any of it. His world had narrowed to the miracle unfolding beneath him, something doctors, specialists, and therapists had deemed impossible. Tears welled in his eyes, unbidden. Panic rose, tangled with hope, choking him. He scanned the patio desperately. The girl, where was she? She was already at the gate, silhouetted by the amber dusk, just about to disappear into the street. And as she stepped out of sight, he didn't feel abandoned. He felt awakened. For the first time in years, he wasn't just sitting still. He was starting to believe. The city had changed since the sun went down. The neon lights reflected off puddles on the cracked pavement, casting shimmering shadows across the sidewalk. In the back seat of a black luxury cab, the once paralyzed millionaire sat forward, gripping a printed photo in his trembling hands, a grainy image of a young girl taken from the restaurant's CCTV feed. His legs were moving now, still weak, still limited, but alive. The doctors were stunned. Impossible, they'd said. Spontaneous recovery doesn't happen like this. But he knew better. It wasn't medicine. It wasn't luck. It was her. He rolled down the window as the car slowed near a row of street vendors. Excuse me. He called out, holding up the photo. Have you seen this girl? One vendor squinted at the image. Another shook their head. The third pointed vaguely down the street, mumbling something about a soup line or shelter nearby. Inside the cab, the man exhaled shakily. Every minute that passed stretched the ache in his chest, not of pain, but of urgency. Not just to find her, but to thank her. To understand what she had done, how she had done it. She didn't just take food, he murmured aloud, more to himself than anyone. His voice cracked, barely holding together. She gave me something back. The driver glanced in the mirror, silent. A second chance. That's what it felt like. Not just to walk, but to feel, to be human again, to face the world with something more than wealth. She had woken up something in him he didn't know was asleep, grace. Gratitude. Purpose. He clutched the photo tighter. He wasn't chasing a miracle anymore. He was chasing the person who had become his. The soup kitchen buzzed with quiet movement, metal ladles clinking against pots, steam rising from trays of rice and lentils, tired voices murmuring thanks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was warm, real, and safe. People who had nothing shared everything here. At the center of it, the girl stood behind the counter, her sleeves rolled up, hair tied messily back. She moved with calm purpose, ladling soup into bowls, offering small smiles, never asking for anything in return. This place had become her rhythm, her refuge. The door creaked open. Heads turned, but no one recognized the man who stepped inside. Not immediately. He was no longer the untouchable figure in a luxury wheelchair. He stood, shaky, unsure, limping, but on his own 2 feet. No entourage, no polished suit. Just a man chasing redemption. And when his eyes found her, standing there with ladle in hand, the world seemed to stop. He crossed the room slowly, every step filled with weight not just physical, but emotional, spiritual. People made way, sensing something sacred in the air. Then, without a word, he dropped to his knees before her. Gasps echoed. The girl froze. Tears streamed down his face, unashamed. You asked for my leftovers, he whispered, voice trembling, but you gave me my life. Her hands slowly lowered the ladle. Silence fell over the room, not of shock, but reverence. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She stepped around the counter, knelt beside him, and wrapped her small arms around his shoulders. And in that moment, nothing separated them. Not money, not status, not pain. Just two souls, one who had given, and one who had finally learned what it meant to receive. Healing didn't always begin in hospitals. Sometimes, it started with a plate of leftovers, and a miracle.